Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Erudition Network. I am the host of this program. My name is Eddie Phillips. This is the Erudition Interactive Black History and Knowledge session that we do every Thursday. If you are new to this program is dedicated to teaching and discussing Black history and providing knowledge and understanding on things that we may have heard about but didn't really go and cover in Black history, or that you may not have heard about at all. So we dedicate ourselves on Thursday nights of every week to get on here and cover Black history. I'm glad to be here with you tonight to talk about this. And we'll give a couple more people. So we got 3 people in here. Hey, if you're in here, let us know that you're here. Let us know who you are. Sometimes this thing messes up and it just tells me that you're a Facebook user and it doesn't give me who you are. So if you tell me who you are and that you're here, hey, it lets me know who I'm addressing. So I greatly appreciate that. As I said, we'll give it a couple minutes. Matthew, I see that you're in here. I'm happy that you're here. Eric, I see that you're here. Thank you for being here on tonight's program. Tonight, we're going to cover a couple of things, but as I said, we're going to try to give about another minute for people to get in here. Hey, Dr. Eastday, good to see you. Thank you for joining us tonight for this program. I'm going to give you guys just a couple of more moments, and then we're going to get into what we're going to talk about tonight. All right. I'm going to beseech my son in the background here to do me a favor, because I think I have all right. But yeah, it was a book I think I left. What is today's show about? Yeah, we're going to get into that. We got about 6 people on. Give it about 30 more seconds. I'm here too, but I'm still working, but you know I'm here. I know you're here now. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. I promise you tonight, this won't be a boring session. We're going to talk about a couple of things. Mostly, this session is talking about revisions and lies. Yeah, revisions and lies. So that's kind of a deep subject, but we really want to talk about it because thank you, Teddy, because quite honestly, it is becoming something that is just, it's out of control. It's out of control. All right, we've given about 30 seconds. We've let people out in. Please share, let folks know that we're on tonight as we get into this. Ladies and gentlemen, revisions and lies. So I have had the opportunity lately to answer questions that people send to the network. I always encourage them to
put these questions in open chat or an open forum so that people can, see what the question is. And then that also encourages others to ask questions. But, people sometimes are shy to what they want to know. Well, anyway, I was presented with with a TikTok a couple of days ago. I'll get into this first one that was pretty ludicrous. I won't uh, say who the person particularly is, but what I will say is that this was another way of revision. It's really depressing when you see it during Black History Month that we start to see these things and people um, make statements. And one of the things that it was about was the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, here's the thing. I like to share Black history that is probably, what's the best way for me to say it? Not cyclical. Things that we're not constantly berated with or given every Black History Month. Most of the things that we are berated with are Dr. King, Harriet Tubman, maybe Frederick Douglass, to name a few. Maybe Malcolm X, depends. But we get these same people who are thrown as an attempt to say, hey, this is Black history. Well, our history is much greater than that. But I do want to talk about Dr. King tonight. Well, this person, I really believe, was being obsequious and trying to serve people on a political side, on a conservative political side. But he got up or got on TikTok and talked about how Dr. King really was not a man of God, and that in term that he did not believe in Christ, and that though he has a lot of support through the Black church, he himself did not believe in the divinity of Christ. Now, that to me was very upsetting because, again, good to see you, Mike. Good to see you. It was an attempt to down talk people within our history and to revision what our ancestors have done. The Black church is an important part of our African American history, but also world history. Let me beseech you with something here. The Black church, other than say the beginning of Christianity and the persecution of Rome, there probably in history is no greater institution that was hunted down, burned, people were killed, and murdered. And in what I say, the difference between killed and murdered, killed is, okay, something happened, maybe they blew, something happened, and there was a result, right? And people were killed. But murder is a premeditated act. What I mean by that is putting dynamite and blowing up little girls, catching people and murdering them for months. I often tell people look at race riots and assaults as if they just happened within a couple of days. And the way that history tries to paint this, right? They always try to paint it as if this was just some random flare up, and then over a couple of days they were able to fix it. But in a reality, if you go back and you look at it, read things like Ida B. Wells' Red Record and things like that, you will find that that was not the case. And that, in fact, a lot of this persecution went on for months. And the reason why we have sundown towns and things like that in this country is because, or very few Black people living in certain cities, is because they ran the Black people out over time by continually killing them, oppressing them, harming them, beating them. And so we like to believe that things like Tulsa, Rosewood, and the list goes on, that those were just flare-ups. But what we forget is that went on over time. But I digress. Mike, I see what you said. You said he's a clown, and that he called Dr. King a heretic. Yes, he did. He called Dr. King a heretic. Now, I want you guys to understand that there was a book, I think it was written in 1968. It's called The Story of Martin Luther King Jr. You are free to go look up that book. It was written by a racist, and the idea was to assume that Dr. King was a created individual, to try to dissuade people from believing that the effects of the civil rights movement were church-based, religious, or organic in the fact that they came out of faith. That is important, because when you go and you look at this individual, what he said, he's basing his obtuse mentality and thoughts on what was put in that book and in other politicians' approaches to Dr. King. Many believe that he was motivated by communism, by the Russians, and there's all these ridiculous theories. But I'm going to tell you something tonight. I believe that when we deal with revision, we got to go to the source. We got to go look up, right? Not base it on one person's approach, testimony, thought, or whatever. We got to do something and actually go look at it. So when I saw that individual, the first thing that I did is I went and I pulled up Dr. King's collected works. It's the first thing I went and pulled up. Not based on what Eddie thought he knew, but based on what Dr. King wrote in his own words, right? Testament of Hope, my mother was able to get this book for me. I had this book several years ago, and I thank my mother for actually going to Dr. King's place of birth and going to the bookstore and getting this book. Her and our dear family friend Denise, and I greatly appreciate both of them in doing this. And even though it took some time to get to me, you see that it's been kind of hurt as the mail delivered it, it still works its purpose. Well, if you go and you look through Dr. King's work, right, you will notice that Dr. King presented a speech. It's called The Current Crisis in Race Relations. And in this part of the book, right, Dr. King breaks out several things. He breaks out what the struggle for civil rights is. He breaks out what nonviolence means. He breaks out the idea of how we fight against evil and the racism and internal violence and all of these things. But there is a section here, right here. It's called faith, right? It's called faith. And in that section, Dr. King, and I'm going to read this here, he said that this is the faith that keeps nonviolent resistor going through all the tension and suffering that he must inevitably confront. Those of us who call the name of Jesus Christ find something at the center of our faith, which forever reminds us that God is on the side of truth and justice. Good Friday, right, may occupy the throne for a day, but ultimately, or in other words, the persecution of Christ may be there for a while, but Good Friday must give way to the triumph of Easter. Evil may so shape events that Caesar may occupy a palace and Christ may be put on a cross, but that same Christ arose and split history into AD and BC. So that even the life of Caesar must be dated by the name of Christ. And then you will end this. There are parts that Dr. King has always quoted at. Yes, the arc of moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. There is something in the universe that which justifies in saying, truth crushed to earth will rise again. This does not sound like someone who does not understand the relevancy of the resurrection of Christ, which is the baseline for Christianity. It also reflects the fact that Dr. King saw that faith was an essential part of the struggle Faith in God was an essential part to get us from where we were to where we are now, to end segregation. And so, as he said, hardship may exist for a little bit, but what we learn through the resurrection of Christ is that it does not last always. I believe that we have to understand these things when we confront revisions and lies. He definitely took what Dr. King said out of context. Yes, because what Dr. King was actually saying in the context of what he was talking about is that we also have to understand that Christ lived as a man, flesh and blood. He felt pain. And that the crucifixion of Christ, historically, crucifixion is horribly, right? Was complete destruction. Anytime you look through history and you look at Roman history, people were decimated. Decimated. Those were the words that were used. So for Christ to go through that crucifixion, right? We have to understand that he did that as a man, not God. As a man, he had to feel those pains. And so what Dr. King was saying was that when we remove or we just say that, well, Christ was God, so it didn't hurt him, that is a lie. And that we should not focus on just the fact that Christ was a part of God, but understand that he had to be here as a man living in flesh. That's what he was saying. But why is that important to the politics of today? Because if we could tell you that the Black church had really no true conviction towards the era of civil rights and that the church had nothing to really do with it, we take away from all of those church meetings. We take away from that faith that Dr. King talked about. We take away from that belief that the African American had. We take away from the belief that the Africans had as they were bought over in ships and enslaved over here. We take away from the belief in God that is inherent in African people. And we say, well, it's a socio-political issue and not something that was really based on that. But he told you right there, faith is what got them through. We have to do better when we see these folks on TikTok, social media, who say things. And I actually invited that individual to be here tonight, because I don't believe that you hide away from those discussions. It doesn't have to be an argument. But because I believe that that person was being obsequious, that that person was trying to serve a political understanding, that is why they're not here tonight. And when confronted, they just ignore it because they've already put their rhetoric out there into the world. Revision. We have to understand that revision is something that is extremely popular out here. People say things that are not true about our history. I heard Pastor Ray's, a friend of the program, say recently that I believe it was a congresswoman that said that she was glad that she was born in America, because had she been born in Africa, she would have been worshiping pagan gods or trees or whatever. And that ignores the Christian and the Judeo history that is in Africa. That ignores the Solomonic Empire that was born out of the connection between the Queen of Sheba and Solomon. That ignores all of these cultures that gave themselves to the understanding that there is a God. We pretend that by looking at history that Africans worship some false god all the time. This is what we tell ourselves. But then we ignore to go in and read the history for what it is. We ignore why did the Egyptians create what they did create with their gods. There was a reason. Why was it focused on the sun? I've told you many times over many different episodes of Erudition why that was. Because as they saw it, the sun changed their lives. That solar insolation that I talk about very often that burned areas of Africa as thermal and solar heat pierced into the earth in a way where it heated up areas where they could not farm, where they could not raise animals. The sun does something to you. Flooding. All of these things do things to people. And so they have to reference that in whatever way. But when they knew better, they did better. History supports that. When they knew better, they did better. But we allow ourselves to be manipulated into believing something that is not true. And so I have seen people on these social media platforms telling us things that are ridiculous. People who don't know anything about the Exumite civilization or the Christianization of Ethiopia. People who have never picked up a book to learn any of these things. But they're telling you something, and many of us are believing it. We're picking up gods and false truths and folklores, and we're living with those folklores. And it makes some people mad. But I believe that history leaves a trace. It leaves a trace. I challenge you tonight to go look up King Azana. Ezana. I'll put it in chat for you. Go look up King Azana and get an understanding of how the Exumite people became Christians. I challenge you to go look at the history of Mesopotamia. I challenge you to go pick up Pastor Razor's new book. Read those things to have a better understanding biblically and historically and how they come together so that you can fight against this idea and the lies that are out here. I got a notification from Ancestry.com. I think it was yesterday. And they were saying, hey, Eddie, we looked at your DNA and you're part of these new groups. And I looked at this map that they gave me as it traced my DNA across the map. And I laughed because if you look at the way the DNA kind of fed out, it made me laugh because I was like, wow, this is exactly how we know man progressed. It didn't surprise me that I have Asian DNA and that I have, or there's things in my DNA that point to Asians in my family and sub-Saharan African actually, and European and Mexican and South American, and I'm just looking at all of these groups that I fall into, and I say, well, we're all related. We're all related. The difference is our honesty about the relation. There's another video someone sent me of neo-Nazis marching down the street, modern day, with their faces covered, spewing hatred. And it showed me again that we are falling into a revisionist state where we pretend that racism and buffoonery and these things don't happen and that they don't exist. That we're further involved in this foolery, and we're regressing, because what are we being taught? We're being taught neoconservatism, globalization, terrorism. We're being taught that these things are okay. It's just an expression of who we are. Now, I don't mind you expressing yourself. I have absolutely no problem with you expressing yourself. But when you take hate speech and make it a political issue, when you make it a law, when you start to pass things in this country to harass people of color or people who you think are less than you, rather they be the same color that you are, this suppression is still here. And in honesty, it may even be rising, because too many of us are lying to ourselves. We're pretending it does not exist. We're pretending it doesn't affect us. But we have people with racial slants walking into grocery stores and blowing away elderly and young Black people. We have young African American men being pulled outside on the street and given medication that leads to their death. We have people in our own cultures participating in a radical idea of the law and oppression and beating Black men to death just a few feet from their own homes. And when you go pick up any books by, and for some reason lately, I've really been referencing Ida B. Wells a lot. But we are at that point again. We are reaching that red record status. And unlike the time of Ida B. Wells, Walter White, different individuals who would go down and interview folks to find out what these lynchings were about, we are in a denial of racial murder. We're allowing it. We have political candidates who tell us that there were different reasons for slavery other than the fact of the enslavement. Different reasons for the Civil War other than the fact of the enslavement of African American people. And I know that some of this angers people and they get mad that I focus on this. But I wanted to give about 30 minutes of this program to address these things. Because it's important. I was listening. My wife was watching something earlier, and I heard someone say that we pick up things subliminally. Right? We pick up things subliminally. And I was talking about how, you hear different songs on television or different things on the radio, and then it becomes a part of you, and you just accept it, and you didn't try to learn it. Everybody knows the musical theme for McDonald's, and I'm loving it. Everybody knows certain things because you just pick up on those things. And you have to be careful with the subliminal nature of things because it allows you to accept things, to create a dissonance, to start to believe that that thing that should disturb you becomes a normalcy for you. Big on TikTok or YouTube or anything that can just continually plays videos. Even if you got it sitting on the side, it's maybe you got YouTube playing on your television, it's on your phone, and you're not really paying attention to it as you think, you're picking up on these things. And then so many of us, we take the things that we pick up on and we regurgitate it. We tell it to someone else who may not have seen it. And we tell it to them as if it's a fact. And before we know it, a false fact has now went all over the world. And for people who greatly are in need of learning their own history and seem to have a problem in learning their history, I tell people all the time, I'm waiting. I can't get people to really understand the importance of history, not in a grand scheme. I appreciate every one of you who are here tonight. One of the things that I'm pushing this year is prioritize your history. Prioritize it in your learning. Prioritize it in what you do. I had the benefit of being on the Man Up Real Talk show last week, and Phyllis on the show asked that I put out a list, and I'm going to do that every week. However, I'm going to do it on our Erudition Network interactive group because I want people to get into that group, because the group allows me to share PDFs and articles and things like that our page may not do. I want you to join both, but I put it in the group because I want you to be able to see it and to know it. I'll give you 2 books that I suggested out of the list of 10, because I'm doing a list of 10 every week. It's one book that I read every year. That is W.B. Du Bois' 1903 book, The Souls of Black Folks. Why? Because I think it's important that you understand what Du Bois is trying to say in that book and the reason that he wrote that book, and understand that the title of that is that Black folks have a soul. They are human. And they bring something to this world. The African brought something to this world. And too often in history, we don't get to understand that. The other book that I suggested is Carter G. Woodson's The Miseducation of the Negro, written in 1933. Because in that book, Dr. Woodson tries to advance the idea of how revision and lies and foolery have affected the African American. How we've been miseducated, led astray, bamboozled, as Malcolm said. How we don't prioritize our past. And because that we don't do that, we don't shape our future. We don't know where we came from. So many of us are walking around lost to know where we need to go. We have become the stumbling, and this is painful to say, but we have become the stumbling blocks in a long lineage of success. People who came over and were enslaved and terrorized, who kept faith about you and me. Some went and started businesses. Some became bakers and metal workers and owned businesses and farmers and all of this. And because of the horrors of the South between the years of the 1930s to the 60s, they left. They left what they had, but they didn't leave without providing us knowledge. And many of us don't take the knowledge of our ancestors further. And that miseducation is deep because it leads to the dropout rates in our schools. It leads to the cultural depression that has fallen on our men and our women. It leads to the salaciousness, the sexuality. It has led us to become stumbling blocks in success. A people who helped, and some would argue, I argue, built America can't seem to find their way because they don't know who they were. These revisions, lies, and fallacies can only be fought against when we decide to learn. I hope you join the Erudition Network page on Facebook, and I hope that you go and then by proxy join the Erudition Network Interactive Black History group. Because I guarantee you every week, if you only read one of those books that I suggest, it's going to help you. It's going to help you to understand something that maybe you just weren't taught. I know you weren't taught from kindergarten to 12th grade. Reading these books for people who gave their lives, who actually wrote and spent their lives trying to tell us the truth. All right. The other thing I wanted to talk about tonight, as you know, we have been working on getting a book out here. I'm still going through with my publisher trying to get this. They sent me back some things that they wanted corrected or done on this interactive book. And I am looking forward to getting that book to you all. I keep telling my family, they keep telling me, you know, they want to read it. And I understand all of that. But the purpose of the book, of that book, is predominantly to try to get us to understand who we are. That's its purpose. It's designed for this show, this program, this network. Because one of the things that I found is that a lot when I do this program, I always try to get people to ask questions in an interactive way. And a lot of times People said they said my mother was one that broke it down to me. They don't know what to ask. And I get that. I was on the Man Up Real Talk show, and I showed, matter of fact, you know what? And I showed you all what we were talking about here with the book, because I wanted you to see how it operates. And there was a promotional copy. That's what I'm showing you right now. This is the upcoming book. I also want to get it out in paperback, which is what I'm actually working on right now while they're vetting it, to get the actual paperback version of the book, which will not be interactive. I have to keep saying that because it's interactive as an ebook, obviously, because it is a digital book and it will work that way. But for the purposes of what I'm talking about right now, when we do the print book, it will still be a quiz book. And let me clarify this while I'm talking about my book. I did not want to write a book that was just me asking you questions. And so when you get a copy of this book, whether you get the print version that's come out or you get a ebook, I want you to understand that this is not just a quiz book, right? Thank you, Mike. It is. I am very proud of the work that God allowed me to put into this book, because it's going to do what I wanted it to do. I don't want you focusing on history from 1619. I don't want you thinking that your history started in bondage. I want you to consider your history to be something more than that. And let me say something else, because I was laughing when I saw this today. Was I was looking at the promotional copy. You notice that at the bottom down here, when it does the ebook, it says 1 through 88. I want you to remember that the promotional copy, I think, only has, it may have 10 to 20 questions in it. This is 101 questions. So even the digital size of this book is kind of big. And I understand the publisher's desire to go over it as we code this book. But one of the other things, I believe it's only 12 questions in here, and at 88 pages. So that says something. And we only shared 2 of them, I think, on the Man Up Real Talk show the other day. But you will notice the questions, some of the questions that are on the promotional copy. But the point of it is, right, is that we want questions to make you think. We want questions to make you think, right? We want to talk about things that affect people, that we're seeing modern time, that is hitting people in a way. You please forgive the freezing, because I'm streaming at the same time and doing a lot on the computer. That's why it's doing that. But the point of the matter is, the whole purpose of this book is to ask questions for you, to get you to start asking those questions. Because if we can get you to start asking those questions, then we can answer them, and then we can get you to learn. We can get you to learn. And that's where we want to be. That's where we want to be. Y'all been quiet here tonight. I got about 4 or 5 people. I'll keep seeing some drop in and out. Any questions, any thoughts tonight on the book, on revision, on things you're seeing right now? I'm open to it. I think we got about 20 more minutes, do we? Yeah, roughly 15, 20 more minutes. I'm open to whatever you want to talk about, and we can we can have a conversation on here if you want to. If not, I'll just keep spouting whatever information out here for you. Anybody? Anybody? Bueller. I'm not teasing you on anything. As you know, this book is very interactive. And had it been just a normal ebook, it probably would be done and have no problem. But because this book is an interactive book that had to be coded and put in a certain way, it has to be able to work in the way that the publisher wants it to work. And I hope that answers that question. Is that the only question? I hate dead air. I know some of y'all got something that you want to ask. Maybe it's something you saw in, I got young folks on here too. Maybe it's something you saw in your history classes this week. Something. I feel like lately the interactive program has become less interactive. So I'm giving that time tonight because I want you guys to ask questions. Give us something that maybe you think. We're getting to the end of Black History Month, but Black History for Erudition is 365 days a year. So I'm open to whatever you want to talk about and ask. Even if it is a book question, as Tina just asked. I guess nobody has anything. That's fine. Hey, you know what? I tell you what. Let's look at a question on this book since it finally unfroze. Can anybody answer this question? I'll do that. I know it's going to be a great book and informative read. What level of education do you think it will give readers? I think that the level of education for this book, because we don't get a lot of Black history, I think that it will be from maybe middle school level to up to even some college level. And the reason that I say this is because we don't get this information. And most of the time between kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. So, and some of it you may not even see in African American studies classes because we've refined those classes to only cover certain things. Go over Republican and Democrat history one show. Some Black people think we just supposed to be Democrats. Let's do that after Black history. That is a good point, right? I will say that a lot of Black people don't even realize that that African Americans used to vote Republican, and they don't know about the Lily White movement. They don't know about how the Republicans forced Black people out of the party of Lincoln, and then the full betrayal of, say, Nixon, that turned people away from the Republican Party when there was an issue with Dr. King. I think that would be a great subject to bring up, my brother, and we can definitely talk about that coming up. So that's a good point, John. The digital copy of this book will be about $18. That's what we're going to price it on. The full print copy of the book, we haven't determined yet because it's a printing cost, so it will probably be more. But my point was to keep it just under $20 because I wanted people to be able to learn from it. Now, me and my wife have gone back and forth with this because the level of information in this book is huge. It's huge. It's not teasing, Tina. What it is I have to let you see what it is. And I'm not showing you. There are 101 questions in this book. I'm not teasing you. But if anything in marketing is to let you see what it is that we're asking and what you're going to get from this book. So, Jason, right now we're working with the publisher. As soon as I know, you will see me online getting this book out here. This is an interactive book, which means that when you load it, it'll ask the question and you have an answer, and rather it be right or wrong, it's going to direct you. Yeah, I look. I always buy a digital and maybe a hard copy because I understand the purpose of having both. Digital because, and sometimes if I don't buy the digital, I'll buy Audible because I understand the need to be able to learn on the run. Anybody got an answer to this question? We're coming down to the last 10 minutes of the program. Soon as it comes out, you will see a lot of promotion for it. I'm waiting, hopefully, to hear something from them as of tomorrow, because I just sent some stuff in today. Anybody got an answer? Even if it's the wrong answer. Titty, you ridiculous. She said I'm stalling because I don't know the answer. Anybody got an answer? My sons are on here. What's the answer? Give me an answer. What ancient African kingdom was famous for its gold trade, had a ruler named Mansa Musa? This is a very easy question, too. Considered one of the wealthiest individuals in history. Anybody. I know that Teddy says Mali. You are absolutely correct, my son. It is Mali. Mali is the answer. Hopefully, I'm sorry, we're doing a little slow because there it is. So, as you will see, ladies and gentlemen, the way this book works is once you know it's correct, Teddy, you're absolutely right. Mansa Musa ruled the Mali Empire from 1312 to 1337, which was a period of significant expansion, stability, and economic prosperity. And then it'll go into who Mansa Musa is, why he is important, and why Mali was important. And it is an extensive answer, right? You say you just got Mali. It'd be easy if we had your book, but I don't have a clue. The issue with this book, too, is I wanted to make sure that when you answer these questions, it even if you answered wrong, right? Even if you answered wrong, that it's going to give you something to go back and try again. It's going to make you think about what it is that's being said and give you reference. And I'm going to tell you something about this that you don't see on here. You will have reference. I was recently reading one of these guys wrote a very popular Black history book. It's very popular. I'm not going to say the name. I'm not going to promote him because I didn't like the book. But in his book, in the back, he says, we're not going to do the citation thing. I'm not going to tell you what I referenced. And that, to me, bothered me. It bothered me. He said, oh, we got end notes, and I just threw stuff in the end note. But it bothered me because I was like, wait a minute. Give your full citations. Give full evidence, because it's not for you. It's not for you. What it is it's designed so that people know where to go to read on their own, to learn on their own. Oh, ain't no problem. There's 101 questions in this book, and this is the first of 3. The good thing is, now that we figured out the code for it, the other one should be easier to push out and get done. And that's really what my goal was. I'm glad that you knew the answer. I'm glad that you knew the answer, John, because it's important to know your history. But yeah, I want to make sure that you understand that for every question that we ask in this book, there is reference, there are sources, because erudition is all about making sure you have primary and secondary sources. That's what we're about. Ladies and gentlemen, we're getting down to the last 5 minutes of this session. As I always say, I know I spent a lot of time during the first 30 minutes talking about, and I hate to speak like that, but I got to make it very clear that we seem to be going down a path of revision and lies. And you need a source to go to that you can trust. And I always say the best source to go to that you can trust is somebody, right, who's proven to you that not only are they going to tell you the truth and give you a fact, but then they're going to tell you where to go get that fact. They're not going to hide it. You're going to know that what they told you was validated, venerated, and that you know that this is real. That is how this network does business. That's what we do. That's what we continue to do for you every Thursday. And I always encourage you to ask questions. And I'm more likely now than I was maybe a year ago to share our broadcast across multiple different social media streams, different groups, places on Facebook, because I want you to encourage others, right, to join us. Challenge what we're talking about. We didn't put the banner up. I'm bad about putting the banner up. As we get ready to leave out of here tonight, if you want to support the Erudition Network, you can do that through our Cash App. It's $ the Erudition Network. You will see the symbol for the Erudition Network. And once you see that symbol, this symbol right here, you will know you're in the right place. And whatever you can do to help out with the network goals, to help us with our equipment, and the things that we do to better the teaching of Black history. A lot of the efforts from people have helped us in order to even try to give me time to get this book in order. And I really do appreciate your assistance and your help in doing the things that you've done. It is needed and it is greatly, greatly appreciated. If you guys don't have anything else tonight, I see somebody else had a comment. Knowledge is power. I completely agree. If you have nothing else, no questions, no thoughts tonight, I'm gonna get ready to get out of here. The hour usually is lately it's been going pretty fast. It's been going pretty fast. And maybe because I'm talking and it's not as interactive, and that's what I want to get us back to. We need to be more and more interactive. I hope after we get this book out here, it will give you at least 101 questions to ask as we go forward in teaching this program. I see great things getting ready to happen with Erudition, and we're working very hard to get those things done. as I said, I'm going to get out of here. The next program will be on Monday. Tina will be on, God willing, with Adroit Living. She comes on at 5 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time, 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. Talk about how to live an adroit life, psychological health, mental health. And then my sons, who did not do a show this week, but they should be back on Wednesday for Erudition Generations to discuss whatever it is that they're going to discuss. You never know with my kids, but I hope that you got something from this program tonight. If you did, please share. Get people to watch as we try to grow this network. I will be back here, God willing, next Thursday, and we will go forward. As soon as information comes out more about this book's release, you will see that. Go join the Erudition Network page on Facebook. Subscribe to us on YouTube and join the Erudition group, Interactive Black History and Knowledge group on Facebook. It is a group worth joining. You will get information from that group. I cannot say it enough. It is a group worth joining. Join that group. You will start to see more being put in there exclusively for the group. And also, we always put things on the Erudition Network main page. But I look forward to seeing you in the group and interacting with you through that and on this program. All right. I have said enough. I'm going to get out of here and ask that God cover you all and keep you all until we see you again next week. Have a good one. Thank you.